Bills at Browns. We're in the first quarter, about 8 minutes on the clock. The Bills have the ball. They come out in this kind of unusual personnel package and formation for them. Very heavy personnel. We've got 3 tight ends on the field. This is 13 personnel, 1 running back, and 3 tight ends. The Bills tend to like using 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, and then 3 receivers. They also tend to like using mostly spread formations where the receivers are lined up wide, and then Josh Allen is in the shotgun with James Cook right next to him here. Now, tight ends are bigger, stronger, more capable blockers usually than receivers. So when an offense comes out with more tight ends than they normally would, let's say normally is 1 tight end, 1 running back, 11 personnel. That's the most commonly used personnel package in the NFL. So when they come out in that typical 11 personnel, what the defense typically likes to do is match their personnel to what the offense has on the field. They're trying to have the bodies that they have on the field be comparable in terms of strategy to what the offense is doing. So what that typically means is the defense will have a 4-2-5 nickel. So what that means, the numbers are number of defensive linemen, number of linebackers, and the number of players in the secondary, cornerbacks and safeties. It needs to add up to 11. So in this case, the Browns have come out in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defensive linemen. They've got 1, 2, 3 linebackers, and then the remaining 3 in the secondary. So a 5-3-3. This is a very heavy formation for the defense. And the reason for this is because this helps them protect against the run more effectively. You've got more linemen who are bigger, better at defeating blocks and tackling at the line of scrimmage. You've got fewer players in the secondary. So safeties, cornerbacks, they're really good against pass defense. So because the offense has fewer receivers on the field, there's less need for the defense to have as many in the secondary. So instead they choose to add that lineman and then also maintain 3 linebackers as well. So that's the reason for these personnel packages. You might hear people talk about a base defense. So typically that would be either a 4-3, 4 linemen and 3 linebackers, or a 3-4. Typically a 4-3 is kind of more common. That's just kind of like a more balanced personnel type. But usually in modern NFL, you'll see a 4-2-5 as kind of the stock. And that's just because of the passing threat, the increasing passing threat that we're seeing in the NFL, just based on the personnel, the talent that's coming out of college. Okay, so based on that, what we're about to see is a play you've probably seen on the highlight reel. It's a massive touchdown run, a 44-yard touchdown run from James Cook. And you'll typically see the Bills do a lot of zone runs, which would mean where the entire line moves laterally in unison, and Cook is then expected to make a read. He'll have a primary gap that he's expected to run through A, B, C, D. But then based on how the blocks develop, he has the option to, either bend into a different gap or bounce to the outside. And that is kind of what we see with some of the blocking on this play. We've got the left side of our line doing kind of a lateral block like this, and they're expected to block the guy in the left gap, the gap left of them, which in this case is pretty clean. We've got the defensive end, linebacker, and defensive tackle right in those gaps, so their responsibilities are very clear. We've got on the other side the right guard and the right tackle doing the same thing, blocking left. They have a very obvious blocking assignment just based on how the defense is lining up pre-snap. And then we have our tight end on the right side. So this actually is a run to the right. That's a bit of the deception on this play and what makes it interesting. Despite all of this blocking that's going towards the left, it is a run to the right. So this tight end on the running side initially does make contact with this defensive end, but he's trying not to. So he kind of swims around him and climbs to this strong safety. That's his responsibility, which begs the question, well, what's the offense going to do about this defensive end? How are they going to solve this free guy who's running toward the running back on that side? Well, what they're doing is pulling their center across behind their right guard and right tackle, and he is now doing a kick out block and just trying to push that defensive end as far out as he can. So this is pretty good play design. This center is a more capable blocker, most likely, than this tight end. So for that tight end to block the safety, that's a better matchup for the offense. And same with this center blocking that defensive end. Defensive end's pretty, more agile. They're strong. They're bigger. So that's a good matchup for a center whose primary responsibility is to block, right? And then we also have a bit of a pull from this tight end here. Now, I think his responsibility is to act as a lead blocker. So he's meant to run before James Cook into the primary hole, which in this case is this C gap. Now, as these right guard and right tackle are blocking toward the left, the hole ends up being kind of like over here. But regardless, we're running through this C gap between the right tackle and the tight end. And so this tight end over here, he's meant to pull across and go through that hole first in front of the running back and act as a lead blocker and pick up one of the linebackers, most likely the Mike, who should be picking up on this play and running toward that hole. What ends up happening here, though, is this right guard, because he is, you can see there's quite a bit of gap between him and this defensive tackle who's playing this kind of heads up technique right in front of the center, as opposed to being lined up maybe in like a one technique over closer to the right guard. So this right guard has to step laterally pretty far to have a successful block. Doesn't make really clean contact, and that defensive tackle is able to kind of break through and gets in the way of this tight end as he's running across. And so this tight end effectively ends up blocking that defensive tackle. He's unable to become the primary lead blocker through that C gap. So that's already a bit of a problem for the offense here. But what happens next is a mistake from the Browns defense. This Mike has a responsibility to read the play. What side is the ball being run to, the left or the right? And he's going to have a gap responsibility. So it depends on what the defensive line is doing, but we can presume that our defensive tackle here is going through this A gap here. This defensive tackle is going through this B gap, which leaves this A gap unaccounted for. That's likely what this Mike is responsible for protecting. So if the run comes through there, that's his first look. But of course, he can adapt based on where the run is actually going. So because of how it develops with the blocks from the offensive line here, that A gap is kind of blocked off, and he reads that it's coming over here to the C gap. So he moves laterally to the right and gets in a really good position before Cook ends up in this slot. And because our tight end here gets eaten up in traffic in front, it's actually looking pretty good for the defense. They're in a really good position right in that C gap hole where Cook is running towards. But here's where the mistake happens. We've got our Sam linebacker who is trying to make a play, and he moves laterally really quickly across the field, and look at all the distance that he has to make up for here. And he does actually a really good job, but he actually overextends, and he comes right to this C gap right next to his Mike linebacker. And as Cook comes through the C gap, he reads that he is moving with full momentum this way, makes a quick hard cut to the left, and is completely free now. The Mike, who was in good position, turns toward the running back, but his Sam linebacker next to him is right in the way, creating traffic. So he effectively eliminates this Mike from making a play, and Cook then kind of runs down the field. The only guy he really has to beat is this free safety, who he's able to, in open space, quickly kind of evade. We've got a cornerback, I think, that's maybe contesting for a tackle too, but he pretty easily weaves his way along the right side for this 44-yard touchdown. So it's an interesting play call with some pretty good blocking, a couple mistakes. I mean, the tight end here, not necessarily a mistake. We wish that this right guard would have made a good block, which would have allowed that tight end to come through that C gap. But then the overcommitting from that Sam linebacker really created this opportunity for Cook to make that cut. Great play by Cook, good read, and a really, athletic play to make that cut. And then, of course, weaving into the end zone as well. Raiders at Texans. It's the first quarter, 2nd and 10. The first drive that the Raiders have the ball in this game. And yes, we're choosing the Raiders because they do something really fascinating that most teams do in the league, but they give a really clear example in this game. They come out in this formation, which on its own is pretty interesting. Shotgun, but in empty backfield, meaning there's nobody but the quarterback in the backfield. All 5 receivers, tight ends, and running backs are lined up on the line of scrimmage in a passing formation. Most interestingly is running back Gianti, who's lined up wide right. The offense is in this 2-by-3 formation, 2 receivers on one side, 3 on the other. And the result of this particular play in the first quarter is unremarkable. Geno rolls out to the right, throws an incompletion on the right sideline. But what's interesting about this is the offense is trying to learn what the defense is doing in reaction to this formation. So what they're doing is just picking up on patterns, trying to learn tendencies and rules so that they can exploit those later in the game. So what they're noticing is, number one, they have a single high safety. This could suggest cover 3, could suggest cover 1, or maybe disguised as some other type of coverage, but those are the 2 most likely outcomes here. But the most interesting thing is this matchup on the right side. We've got the linebacker lined up directly in front of the running back. This is a telltale sign that the defense is playing man coverage, and the offense knows this without even having to do any kind of pre-snap motion. Why? Because it's a linebacker position. If this was zone coverage, it's the cornerback who would be lined up out here. He might have this zone responsibility or even a deep responsibility, and he would just happen to be lined up in front of the running back who is lined up wide right. But the fact that this is a linebacker is why we know this is man-on-man coverage. The linebacker is almost always who's going to be matched up one-on-one against the running back. And so if that running back decides or is assigned to line up on the outside, that's where the linebacker is lining up as well. So that's a really interesting pre-snap tell of what the defense is doing. So without doing anything, the offense likely knows that this is cover one man. Later on in the game, in the third quarter, about 10 minutes left, the Raiders have the ball and they're on their own 40-yard line. They come out in essentially the same formation, but flipped. We've got 3 on the left this time and 2 on the right. But importantly, the running back is lined up wide left. The defense comes out in pretty much the exact same formation as well. Single high safety, linebacker lined up in front of the running back. There's no guarantee that they would come out like this, but this is only the second time in the game that the Raiders have called this formation, and they're seeing the exact type of defense that they did the first time. So if they're smart, they would have called a play that exploits the weakness of this cover one man. And that's exactly what they do. So these 2 receivers are running quick outs. This receiver is running an out across the middle. But importantly, the outside receiver and the running back are running go routes. If you think about what this strong safety's responsibility is, responsible for protecting the deep field and providing support to whichever side of the field needs help. If both the running back and this receiver get open and win their matchup deep, this strong safety is not going to be able to cover both. He's going to have to choose which one to cover. So he's going to have to make a really quick play and get over to that side of the field quickly to provide support. And what happens here is Gianti runs, kind of takes a step inside as if he's about to make a cut, but then quickly continues that outside leverage and runs deep, getting a step or 2 on that linebacker. Gino finds him for a big completion. The strong safety gets there almost on time, a little bit late, but he's able to make contact. The running back is able to break a tackle and run in for a 60-yard touchdown. So the play call exploits a weakness of this defense, but they likely also like the matchup between Gianti and this linebacker. Now, Gianti is not known as being a speed guy. He didn't run the 40 at the combine, but it's estimated that his 40-yard dash is approximately 4.5 seconds, which is not super fast. But this linebacker, almost, most linebackers in the league are not speed guys either. This guy is Henry Tutu. He ran a 4.62 40, so he's slower, and his role is typically not to play deep coverage. So regardless of whether it's a receiver, a tight end, or a running back, that's going to be a favorable matchup for the offense. So that's why they likely wanted to exploit that. So good play call, good personnel matchup, and good use of intel from the first quarter, and then to exploit that later in the game. Steelers at Lions. We're in the fourth quarter, about 6 minutes and 50 seconds on the clock. It's 1st and 10. The Steelers have the ball. They're on the 45-yard line, and they're leading this game 22-17. They come out in 21 personnel, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, 2 receivers in this tight formation. I formation as well. So quarterback is under center with the 2 running backs lined up directly behind him. We can presume that one of the running backs will act as a lead blocker. Very credible run threat. So here's how the blocking scheme looks. We have on the backside our tight end block, our linebacker. We've got this right tackle doing a block on this defensive end, which is a pretty tough task. He's got to step left, get in front of him, and kind of hold him out to that right side. Does a good job there. Our right guard, responsible for his gap on the left. Our left guard and tackles, responsible for their gaps, which interestingly then makes this center able to climb immediately to the second level. Oftentimes you'll see a combo block where the center and the right guard will together block this defensive tackle. Whoever gets him under control, the other one will then peel off and climb to the second layer. But that takes, a little bit of time to happen. But in this case, the center climbs immediately to that second layer, is able to get a quick and clean block on that linebacker, making him ineffective against this run protection. This is a run to the left, so we have our running back coming through this A gap. That is his target, and his lead blocker is coming directly through that A gap and picks up this weak side linebacker. Actually, you'd probably call this your strong side linebacker because our tight end is lined up on the right side. So the offense does a great job with their blocking. Nobody is defeated with their blocks. So the only remaining defenders here that we haven't accounted for are this cornerback and this free safety. Of course, we've got our strong safety and then our cornerback over here. They do have quite a bit of distance to travel, so the offense doesn't have the ability to block literally everybody. In terms of the defenders on the run side of the play, this cornerback and this free safety are the main threats. Our X-receiver here, DK Metcalf, it's his responsibility to at least take out one of these guys to give the running back Warren a chance to have a one-on-one matchup. If he is in space against either the cornerback or the free safety, what happens here is DK kind of runs, not quite a slant, but he runs toward the middle here, which does take the attention of this corner. So the corner comes with him. Also, the mistake here is that the free safety moves with him as well. Now the corner is trying not to get beat to the inside, so he ends up kind of on the inside. The free safety's on the inside as well. DK ends up engaging in a block with that free safety, and all of this space on the left side is completely open, which allows Warren to pop out to the outside, run along the left sideline for a big touchdown. So the mistake here is that this free safety should have been playing more of a contain type role where he sticks to the outside. So he shouldn't have let that inside route from DK persuade him to get to the inside. He already had support here from his strong safety. He also should have made the read pretty quickly that this was a run play. So a couple of things here, but ultimately he should have stayed kind of in this outside contain position, which would have given him a chance to at least make contact, likely tackle the runner for a moderate gain instead of giving up a big touchdown. Bucs at Panthers. There's about 4 minutes left in the first quarter. The Bucs have the ball. They're first and goal at the 1 yard line. They come out in this heavy formation, extra tight ends on the field, really tight formation. So the offensive line, they're lined up in really close proximity to each other. They have a bit of flexibility in terms of how far apart they're lined up. So they're really tight. But importantly, on the outside, on the right, we have our X receiver, Mike Evans, on an island in isolation, lined up in press coverage against this cornerback. And you can see there's nobody anywhere near them to support. So this is truly a one-on-one situation. So what we're about to see here is a touchdown to Mike Evans with a fade route. So I wanted to showcase this. It's a very simple play and a very quick play, but it's something that you see happen a lot in the red zone where receivers will run this kind of like fade. They'll initially be encountering some kind of press coverage. So what that means is this cornerback is lined up in right on that line. And as soon as the ball is snapped, he's going to make contact and try and disrupt the timing of the receiver. So it's the receiver's job to break free of that press coverage quickly and then run this fade, just kind of like this slow leaning route toward the back corner of the end zone. The quarterback then, his responsibility is to throw this high and outside. So he's going to throw this right over top of the shoulder. And the reason he does this is he wants to put the ball in the place where only his receiver can touch it. So in this case, if it goes long, it's going to be incomplete. If he misses high, it's going to be incomplete and out of bounds. If he misses wide toward the sideline here, it's going to be incomplete. He can't miss it short and to the inside. So that's the responsibility of the quarterback to make a good throw here. So as long as he does his job well and is not under pressure, he's got what is a pretty high probability of success play, or at least a low risk play. Now, the reason this works, particularly in this case, is because we're first and goal on the 1 yard line. You couldn't have a higher threat of running. They could run the ball 4 times in a row, first down, second down, third down, and on fourth down if they wanted to. And for the defense to stop them 4 consecutive times in a row is a pretty tough task. So oftentimes you'll see offenses, run at least a couple run plays in this situation. And they come out in this tight formation with the offensive line. They've added an extra tight end here, lined up in this I formation or this single back formation with the quarterback under center. The defense can't help but think this is going to be a runner. They'd be stupid not to at least call a personnel package and a formation here that gives them an opportunity to stop the run. It's the highest probability of success here. That's why we'll see 5 defensive linemen on the line of scrimmage lined up heads up right across here. There's no empty gaps. And this actually isn't even a play action. It's not a fake run. Baker Mayfield just immediately steps back and releases pretty quick to Mike Evans. I mean, he's right on the goal line here, so he just has to make sure that he defeats that press coverage, and he's already there with a well-timed pass. He just threw it high, a little bit to the outside. Mike Evans was able to grab it pretty easily and come down for the touchdown. So another reason in this case that this works particularly well, and notice this when you look at what receiver is lined up in this X position on an island. Evans, he's 6'5", 230 pounds. He's huge. Even for receiver standards, that's very tall, very large. That's going to be a pretty tough situation for pretty much any cornerback in the league. So everything about this play is really tough for the defense. You've got this heavy run threat. You've got this receiver who is extremely capable of winning one-on-one matchups. You're kind of rolling the dice and protecting against what the biggest threat is and just hoping that your cornerback can either disrupt Evans with his press coverage or get a hand on the ball and make a play and make it difficult for him to make that catch. But ultimately, in this case, Evans comes down with the touchdown. Another reason you see this a lot here and not in other parts of the field is because we're right at the back of the end zone. Like the end zone is 10 yards deep. This cornerback is not going to be beat deep, right? Like normally if this safety is back here providing deep coverage, that helps. If this cornerback is playing a deep coverage himself or maybe playing in this kind of out zone, he might be lined up 5 or maybe 8 yards off the line of scrimmage because he can't be beat deep, right? Like that's a part of the field. If you're, further down the field here, you don't want to be beat deep. But in this case, it's only 10 yards to cover. So he can get away with having press coverage. Maybe Evans gets a step and gets behind him. And there's maybe enough room and time for him to recover and make a play on the ball anyways. Whereas in a normal situation, that would allow Evans to get down the field, 20, 30 yards and have a pretty easy, massive touchdown. So press coverage in the red zone is something that you'll see a lot more frequently as well. So keep an eye out for that.